Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce my guest to you today, B. Jeffrey Madoff. He is the founder of Madoff Productions based in New York City. His company produces branded content for major brands such as Ralph Lauren, Radio City Music Hall, Harvard School for Public Health, and the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Madoff began his career as a fashion designer. He was chosen one of the top 10 designers in the U.S., then switched careers to film and video production. He has since expanded his reach to include teaching, book and playwriting, and theatrical producing. He has written and is producing a play based on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame legend, Lloyd Price. Its world premiere will be at People's Light Theater in May of 2021. Madoff is an adjunct professor at Parsons School for Design. A book about his class entitled Creative Careers, Making a Living with Your Ideas was published by Hachette Book Group. Please join me in welcoming Jeff Madoff. Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Tammy. How are you?
Very well. Thank you so much for being here. I am really honored to have you on Work from the Inside Out today. I have a copy of your book, Creative Careers, Making a Living with Your Ideas, in my hands right now. I'm really enjoying it tremendously. It's right up my alley. And I'm excited to talk to you about your book and your really interesting career in your life. So let's start at the beginning. Tell us about some of the earlier years, some of the formative years, and how that might have led you to where you are today.
Well, people ask me often, so what was the turning point in your life? Mine was birth. And, once I was born, that opened up all kinds of possibilities for me. And I was born in Akron, Ohio. It was a great place to grow up and then leave. Although I still, to this day, have many dear friends that are still in Akron and see them when I go back. And I went to college in Madison, Wisconsin, at the University of Wisconsin, and had a double major in philosophy and psychology. Combined with being on the wrestling team, that sort of set me up for a life in business.
Wow. I can see the trajectory, yes.
And I was working in this little boutique, and I had just graduated from college, and a good friend of mine who I grew up with called me up and said, look, I've saved up some money. He had graduated a year before me. Can you think of a gig that would earn more than bank interest? And I said, well, I see the stuff that we sell at the store, and I could always draw. So I said, I'll design clothes.
So and just like that.
Just like that.
Wow.
And by the way, I knew nothing about clothing manufacturing. My parents were in retail, so I knew a bit about retail from osmosis and having worked there, during the holidays when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
But I had no background in fashion design or manufacturing or anything. And I was ignorant, but not stupid.
Right.
And the difference is, ignorance you can learn, stupid's forever. And, so when I saw fabric on the bolt, I thought that was wholesale because it hadn't been made into anything yet. But I, rapidly learned. I cut apart a shirt so I could see, how's this constructed? How does this go together? I sketched some designs, had the women who did alterations for the store put them together, put them in the store. They sold out immediately. I did it again. sold out immediately, got a sample line together, strapped it on the back of my motorcycle, drove to Chicago, went to 18 stores, sold to 15 of them. And I had my proof of concept. I had created something that other people wanted to buy. And so, yeah, it was interesting. And as I was calculating the amount of fabric I needed and went back into the Chicago Merchandise Mart to buy fabric, I finally figured out what was actually wholesale. One of the salesmen said to me, most of the salesmen, by the way, didn't want anything to do with me. You know, I was 21 years old.
Yeah.
And, you know, young people were not starting businesses back then.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
the idea of a startup is relatively new. It wasn't happening when I did that.
Yeah.
And he said to me, do you have how are you going to get this made? Do you have a contractor? I said, maybe. What's a contractor? You know, I had no idea. So he was kind enough to introduce me to somebody. And I met with that guy, and he was my first contractor, started manufacturing my stuff. Jerry Berger was a colorful character. He was the contractor in a small town in Wisconsin, Montello, Wisconsin. So when I drove up on my motorcycle, already I was kind of a surprise to him.
Yeah.
And he said, you got your stuff with you? I said, yeah. Come on in. And I open up the sample case, and he picks up the garments, and he goes, you actually sold this bleep? And I said, yeah. He said, for real? I said, yeah. He said, well, with me making it, you're going to make $1 million. And that started our association together. He was a great guy, a really good man. But what I discovered, my company grew very quickly. I had to get financial backing, and I was able to do that. A very good man in Wisconsin who owned 5 banks, and he was, I think, 5th or 6th generation Wisconsinite, and he financed me because I employed about 120 people who banked at his bank.
Wow.
At a certain point, I wanted to move to New York. You know, initially New York was kind of intimidating, but the more I came here, which is where I live now and have lived for the last 40 some years, the more I visited, the more I wanted to be here. And I'm a stimulus junkie, and I love the city, and I wanted to move. And my backers said, if you move the base of the business out of Wisconsin, I'm not going to continue backing you. So I was faced with a really big decision at quite a young age, which is, do I move and start again? Or do I stay but stagnate, which is what I was concerned with. So, you know, people said to me, well, do you have a job lined up in New York? No. You have a place to live lined up? No. Do you know people there? No. Well, aren't you afraid of what's going to happen if you move? I said, you know, actually, I'm afraid of what's going to happen if I stay. And, you know, money comes and goes. Time only goes. So I negotiated a closing of the business, liquidated the assets, and moved to New York. And I saved up enough that I could, if I lived frugally, which I did, travel, move around, and look at the next chapter of my life. So that was the first big thing and big impact on my life was that. Well,
and so how old were you about when you moved to New York? So you had this company that you had employed 120 people. You had, you know, a growing concern, let's say, at a very young age, and then you sold that and moved to New York. What age were you? I'm curious.
I was 24 when I moved to New York.
Wow. Okay.
Or 25, one or the other. 24, 25 years old.
Yeah. So still very, very young. Yeah.
Yes. And I had office in New York, office in LA, office in Chicago, and a national sales force, aside from all those people that worked for me, you know, in Wisconsin. And, you know, so that was a big thing to face. And also there was a recession that happened and in the early 70s. And all of a sudden stores like Bloomingdale's and others that normally paid in 30 days were taking 3 months to pay. And that was really hard. And what that meant is at a very young age, I had to lay a lot of people off. And I was very conscious of the fact that these people that worked in my factory, most of them were from 15 to 30 years older than me. They all had families, they all had kids. And, so being responsible for their income and then having to be the one responsible to basically lay them off, that was a lot to shoulder at such a young age.
Absolutely.
That was tough.
That's a lot to shoulder even at an older age. So,
yes.
Yeah.
But I was lucky. I was lucky in the fact that I also discovered what I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And what I didn't want to do is manage lots of people.
Yes. Well, you were managing. That was a lot to take on.
Yeah. It was. And, again, I didn't really know what I was doing. I learned by doing it, which is a great way to learn.
Yeah.
It's also a hard way to learn.
Yes.
But I wouldn't have it any other way. And I learned some incredibly important lessons as a result.
Yeah. What would you say helped you to, other than just jumping in and doing these things, were there things or people who helped you to make this successful at that time?
No, I did everything myself. Absolutely. That's actually one of the things that I write about in the book is what I call the myth of the lone genius.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not calling myself a genius, by the way.
Yes.
But it's the notion that, somehow people did it alone.
Right.
And nobody does it alone.
No, they don't.
Steve Jobs had hundreds of people executing ideas, some that were his, others that were iterations. But, there's that myth of the lone genius and the eccentric like him or like Thomas Edison before him or Elon Musk for that matter.
Right.
But they all have the support and efforts of hundreds of people, if not thousands of people behind what they're doing.
Yeah.
So even in my tiny company, I had a lot of people who were essential to helping me build the business, and some who were great to help start it, but didn't have the vision to be able to grow with it. And, so there's a lot that I learned, but I have always, what does Blanche Dubois say? I've always depended on the kindness of strangers. And, I think that asking for help and learning from others is really important. And you also learn who you can trust and sometimes in a difficult way, learn who you can't trust.
Right.
But a lot of people help me.
And would you say at that, I think of people in their early 20s as thinking they know everything they need to know already in some ways. And I could imagine, it sounds like you must have been open to getting advice or getting help in order to grow things as rapidly as you did.
Part of the rapid growth was that what I made sold.
Yeah.
So there was lots of business coming in. But yes, I did. I sought advice, like from Jerry, who I mentioned, and other people who I met, so that I could try to manage what I was doing. I wasn't a person who thought I know everything because it was so painfully obvious that I didn't.
Yeah.
But I wasn't ashamed of that at all.
Right.
I never had any notion that I could do it all alone and do it all myself. And if I didn't, I was somehow deficient.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that didn't plague me.
Yeah. That's great. I know something you mentioned in your book, you talk about, or you recommend that people have their own sort of personal board of directors. Is that what you were, did you have your own personal board of directors at that time?
Yeah, I didn't call it that back then.
Yeah.
But yes, I did. That there were people whose opinions that I sought my financial backer around some issues, my contractor Jerry around some issues, salespeople that worked with me, and and salespeople, it was a whole other learning experience because they could be very effective at selling me on the fact that they could do the job, but actually couldn't do the job.
Right.
And so, it was a constant learning process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that sounds like that's kind of a theme in your life too, though.
It is.
I think you talk about that in your book, and that the learning never stops for you.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, and it's tying that to creativity.
Yes.
I think that people say, well, how do you foster creativity? And to me, you stay curious.
Yes.
Keep learning. And that's what's most important. Go to plays, go to movies, read books, talk to people you don't know. Go to art galleries, go to meetups or conferences where you meet others. Constantly broaden and diversify your social contacts, your business contacts. And I'm not talking about your core group of really close friends. That's something else altogether.
Yeah.
Where I derive a great deal of personal support from my family and closest friends. But I'm talking about in terms of feeding your creative muse, you do that by being a lifelong learner, by maintaining curiosity and seeking new experiences and new ideas and engaging with those things.
Yeah. And clearly your career trajectory reflects that as well, because you reached a certain point in as a clothing and fashion designer where you decided you were not going to continue to do that, and you did pivot. I'm curious what that looked like for you.
Well, I started another company when I ran out of money.
Was that during the recession, or?
Once I moved to New York, and the recession was done. Fortunately, it wasn't for years. It was relatively brief. Probably, I don't even remember. Maybe a year or so.
Yeah.
I don't really remember. But the success and failure rate of new businesses during good and bad times is consistently around the same. The vast majority of businesses fail, and that's in good times and bad times.
Right.
Well, I had learned a lot from what I went through and was able to get a business up on its feet a lot quicker and filter out the people a lot quicker. And then I sold my company. And that's a whole other lifetime and story and so on, which I won't go into.
Yeah.
But as I was selling the company, I met some people who were starting a fashion video company. And I thought that I could parlay my knowledge of fashion. And, I liked photography, and I was self-taught in photography. And then I taught myself how to direct, how to edit, how to sound mix, how to light, how to do all of those things, and changed direction and went into doing film and video production. And I loved doing that. And I felt for me, it used a greater range of the creative ideas that I wanted to embrace and was more fulfilling for me than designing clothes. And so I was lucky to find something like that at a young age.
Yeah. And a lot of that, it sounds like that was somewhat self-taught, but you also met some people who were doing some of that work. So you started your own film production company, or did you join them? It sounds like you met some people doing fashion video. So
I met people who wanted to do fashion videos.
Oh, okay.
And they were just starting a business, and they asked me to come into their business and be a part of it.
I see.
I came into the business. I was with them I guess around 2 years, 3 years, it was clear that we had different goals in mind
I see.
in terms of what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to start my own company, which I did. So
Yeah.
I learned a tremendous amount
Yep.
and then decided to start my own company so that I could realize what I wanted to do in a much fuller form.
Yeah. Yeah. And so tell us more about how that developed.
Well, it was interesting. What gave me my first transition into film, you
Yeah.
familiar with Dennis Hopper?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Okay, so this is a story I don't really tell, but I'll tell you, Tammy, because you've gained my confidence.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you.
So how it came about is significant.
Yeah.
And that was, I was buying fabric, and I bought fabric from this company, Erlanger Bloomgart. And Mr. Erlanger was a very nice man around my father's age, and we got along really well. And he was somebody that when he saw a young person, he saw potential rather than, I don't want to be bothered with this kid. And so we got along well. And one time when I was in there, he said, "Do you know anything about the film business?" I said, "Well, I love movies, but do I really know anything about the business of it? Not really."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, my son's around your age, and he's gotten involved with some people. You got a good head on your shoulders, business. Would you mind meeting him?" I said, "Of course, I'd be happy to meet him." And I did. And his son had bought the rights to William Burroughs's book, Junkie.
Ah.
And if you're familiar with William Burroughs.
I'm familiar with William Burroughs. Junkie doesn't ring a bell, but William Burroughs certainly does.
Yeah, Naked Lunch was probably the one he was most known for, but he was a part of, Allen Ginsberg and Ken Kesey and the Beat generation.
Yeah, yeah.
And an interesting guy. And Dennis Hopper, who at that point had just finished filming Apocalypse Now, was going to be writing and directing the film. And so there was Dennis Hopper, Terry Southern, and William Burroughs. And Tommy, Erlanger's son, and myself.
Yeah.
And so Dennis and I really hit it off. He wanted me to be in the movie. But, that's kind of cool. And but it rapidly became apparent that these people weren't going to finish anything. They weren't going to get anything done. It was probably 1975, 74, something like that.
Yeah.
And let's say that there were other things that got their interest. And those other things were substances which kept them from being productive. And actually, I counseled my friend's son and said, "Look, now that this group is together, they're not going to need you. They're going to get rid of you. And they're going to make you an offer." And he said, "But it's my film." And I said, "It's not going to get made either. I mean, look at these guys. They can't get it together to get out of the room during the daytime. They don't wake up till 4 in the afternoon." And in fact, they made him an offer, and I counseled him to take it. It tripled his money in a matter of like 6 months.
Wow.
Not that it was a lot of money, by the way, but it tripled the money. And that was the end of that project. But during that time, someone who was associated with Burroughs introduced me to these people who were starting a fashion video company. So it was a transition there that was kind of interesting, and it started kind of randomly through a guy that I bought fabrics from.
I love that story. That's a thank you for telling that, because this is the kind of thing where you have this relationship with somebody, you're doing business with somebody, and it's sort of an, "Oh, by the way, would you mind talking to my son?" And now there's this whole story that's part of your history.
Right.
And you were able to also advise his son. And you had enough experience at that point or enough intuition in that situation to say, this thing's not going anywhere.
Right.
Um, and
That's right.
I think that's fascinating. You know, so I love that. That's great.
Thank you.
So you started your own film production company. Tell us where you went with that then.
Well, I had an idea that, and I'd learned this really, that when I started videoing fashion shows, and I was one of the first people doing that with that company, and I realized that the designers never saw their own shows. They're backstage prepping the models, sending them
Mhm.
out after they've touched them up. And
Mhm.
so they're totally reliant on still pictures, which doesn't really show them how the models move. It doesn't show them the audience's reaction or anything like that. Uh, and the other thing is they rely on the people that work for them to give them feedback. And a lot of times those people are much more interested in maintaining their jobs
Right.
than they are on, giving honest feedback.
Yeah.
So to me, there was a need, which is a need for the designer to see their show, see how things were accepted as they went down the runway by audience reaction, see how the clothing moved, all that. And you could use that also, I told them, while people are waiting to come in and shop your collection, it could be playing in your lobby.
Yeah.
And it could be playing in store at point
Mhm.
of purchase,
Yeah.
which that was also all very new too. So I saw a way to telescope the business and provide a lot of answers to questions and solving a lot of problems that they had by not seeing their own line, and that it was another way to promote the line too. So my first client was Halston.
Mhm.
And at that time, which was 1976 or so,
Mhm.
he was at the pinnacle of American fashion.
Oh yeah.
And there was a documentary out about Halston last year, as a matter of fact, which used my footage because I did all of his fashion shows and then interviewed him, and that was in there too. Halston died in 1991. So that footage had a ongoing value. But 2 months or so after Halston, Ralph Lauren became my second client. And I worked with Ralph, until he stopped doing shows about a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
So I had over like a 35-year association with him.
Wow.
So, and worked with Victoria's Secret for 26 years. So I had longevity with those clients, which is something I'm very proud of because it's all very highly competitive. And a piece of business advice to your listeners is make yourself necessary and
Mm.
never give them a reason to seek ideas elsewhere. And so I never took business for granted. I always was delivering new ideas, new approaches, and trying to contribute because to me, if you're looking out for your client's best interest, you're looking out for your own because that's the best way to maintain a client relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just noticing something that a note I took from your book actually in the chapter about creative collaborations and differences, where you took a bit of a page out of I don't know if she wrote a book, but it's the expression you take a page out of someone's book. I took a page out of your book, but you mentioned a piece of advice from Debbie Millman where she said, "Fight for the relationship, not the work." And I like what you're saying here about these long-term relationships you had with these, with these really the these heads of these design houses, um, these icons of design, to have these relationships that lasted so many years when, they could pick anyone to do this work for them. So clearly, you had to have that kind of relationship and trust with them to even bring ideas to them that they might not even like, to take those risks. I assume that you probably risked bringing ideas to them over the years that maybe they didn't like, but that they knew that you were trusting the relationship, they were trusting the relationship enough to keep it fresh.
You're right. I would constantly bring ideas. Of course, not all of them would be adopted.
Sure.
Many were, you know, because I knew their brand, I knew their business, I knew their consumer. So I could bring ideas that weren't crazy. They were an evolution of who they were, in line with who they were. And, because you always have to realize if you're working for a high profile client, be it a celebrity, a designer, whatever, they're kind of set in who they are and what they're doing. And what your job is to enhance that. And if you try to place yourself in front, that's usually not going to work.
No. And in fact, I would expand on that thought and say that to my listeners, that when you, even when you're going after a job or you're going after an opportunity, if you put yourself in front, even though you are the one trying to get the job or go after the opportunity, really, it's almost like I want to say to you, put yourself aside and just think about what's the key here, what's most important, what's the mission or what's the vision here, and go after that. You're just the vehicle for that. Because if you put your ego in front of it, you're going to ruin it immediately. And I find the same thing is in my work as well. If I take myself out of the equation and I put my clients' needs first, it's far better. And it actually frees me up to be more creative in terms of how I think about things. And I can imagine the same has been true for you.
Well, I apply it to acting and the Stanislavski method of acting. And the foundation knowledge that you need to start with is what is the world we're living in? What are the given circumstances that this character is in? So, we accept the fact that Superman can jump out of a skyscraper window and not kill himself, but fly, because that's the given circumstances of that character. And as an exercise with my students, I go through those different steps. And it's the same thing when you're working with a client. I know that Ralph Lauren's aesthetic is of the highest order. And that the brand is about status and good taste. So you're not going to do something that is edgy and funky and whatever for Ralph Lauren, because that's not who he is. That's not who his audience is. That's not what his brand is about.
Right.
So once you know the world that you're living in, then you adapt the ideas to most enhance that world and what that brand is.
Right. And what would you say are some of the keys to doing that? How do you find your way into that? If you've had a client or you're engaging a new client and you're trying to understand their world so that you can fine-tune your way into that so that you can be the creative person behind that, what are some of the things that you do to get there?
Ask questions and listen. And don't try to sell yourself.
Yes.
And do your due diligence before you even have a first meeting. Be familiar with how they're positioning themselves already, with the kinds of imaging that they use. Educate yourself so that you're not starting from ground zero. It's also rude to a client if you're going to go in and you're pitching a client and you're not even really aware of what they do in any meaningful way. You're not going to be successful in pitching them.
Right.
So you need to walk in prepared, have questions, and listen. And that's also the key to any successful collaboration is it's not only you listening, it's them feeling heard.
Right. Oh, I think that's enormous.
And you have to verify that.
Right.
And maybe the verification is that you repeat back part of what they said, but you need to get that kind of back and forth going on so that it is clear that you're paying attention to what they're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that they feel it.
Yeah. Well, and you feel it too, because you can tell when you're in a visceral way, you can tell that you're connecting with somebody and that things are moving in the right direction. Likewise, if it's not moving in the right direction, you can feel that as well.
And you said two key things, two key concepts a few minutes ago, and that was relationships and trust.
Mm-hmm.
Because all good relationships are based on trust.
Yes.
And relationships, I believe, are the true currency in life.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's a business relationship, which is essentially transactional,
right,
doesn't mean it's not fun, doesn't mean it's not pleasant, doesn't mean that you don't like the person, but you also realize that the given circumstances of that relationship, unless something changes, the given circumstances of that relationship is there's a transaction.
right.
They need you for something, you need them for something, and it's a transaction.
Right, right.
Different than a friendship situation.
Right, right.
But they can both feel good, and they both have their own space in your life, professionally and personally.
Right, right. So I didn't realize that you were still doing fashion-oriented film up until a few years ago. I thought that you had moved on from some of that. I guess I had compartmentalized some of your trajectory.
Yeah, I was still doing it. I did Ralph Lauren's huge 50th anniversary event that was in Central Park a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And I have, though, been doing other things too, yes, because I'm restless.
Yeah.
And, it's great. I've had a great time doing what I have done. I have traveled the world. I've worked with great people, talented people, models that are wonderful to work with. And so shooting in great locations and being able to do those things is fantastic.
Yeah.
But I'm also always hungry for something else and something new and something that's going to challenge me creatively and intellectually. Yeah. It's just kind of more, it just makes it more fun for me and more fulfilling.
Right.
So I think anything at a certain point, at least for me, becomes routine.
Yeah.
And I'm much more interested in constant engagement.
Yeah. Yeah. So for example, you've been teaching a class at Parsons School of Design for the last 14 years. And I could imagine that even though it's the title of the course may be the same, that there are lots of nuances and things that have changed about it over the years. Of course, the students are different each time. Can you tell us a little bit about the course that you've been teaching and how that came about?
Sure. I was actually shooting a Ralph Lauren show, directing a Ralph Lauren show. And after the show, I was approached by a guy by the name of Dean Stadel. Now, his name is Dean. That's not his rank. But he was at Parsons, and he taught at Parsons. So when he said to me, it's kind of like who's on first. He said, I'm Dean Stadel, and I teach at Parsons School for Design. I said, so you're the dean? She said, no. I said, I thought you said you were Dean Stadel. I did. Anyhow, he asked me to be a guest lecturer in his class. So I did. It went well, and I was invited back every semester for the next 3 years or so. And then he said, there's an opportunity for a position as an adjunct professor. I think you should take it. And I said, well, my schedule is such, I can't afford to give up the work if I get a production job. He said, well, we'll be flexible with your time. And he said, why don't you try it for a third of a semester, 5 classes? So I did. I didn't know at that time that they were actually trying out 2 other people at the same time. So they divided the semester into 3 sections so they could try each potential professor out. It ended up, I got the offer. I said the same thing about my time. They said the same thing about being flexible. So my tiny sliver of fashion history is I was the last hire that was approved by Tim Gunn before he then took off and did Project Runway.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, because he was the dean of the fashion school at that time.
And yet his name wasn't Dean.
That is correct. That's what I found to this day. I find it so confusing. That's right.
So then you developed your own course.
Well, I wanted to do a course that I would want to take.
Sure.
And I felt like they were getting plenty of information, both the skill of fashion design and retailing and those kinds of things. But I wanted to broaden the vision of what creativity is and show how that applies into all areas of life. So, initially when I brought in guests, most of them were from the fashion business. But then I started broadening and broadening and broadening the scope of my guests. So now, to me, anybody who's got a thought-provoking, eye-opening message, and that we can understand what their creative journey is, what are the obstacles they had to overcome, all of those things, it's fair game. So I've had cognitive neuroscientists, Pulitzer Prize nominated journalists, astronomers, painters, entertainers, comedians, all kinds of different people.
Yeah.
That, to me, the goal is to help the students find their own voice, have them employ critical thinking, and realize that they can have a much greater creative palette if their mind is open to looking in other areas and to learn the business of the business. Because too many people have that dichotomy of, well, I don't know anything about business, I'm creative, or, well, I'm not creative at all, but I know business. And there's no reason why those two things can't come together, because a knowledge of business is a survival skill.
Yes.
And it's important to learn that survival skill, the main reason being so you can continue doing what you love doing.
Absolutely. I would imagine that that course has probably propelled many careers that might not have otherwise made it.
I mean, I guess the main gratification that I get is from students who 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, I'll get an email. And they'll say, I was just thinking about the course, how much that impacted my life, how it changed the direction that I thought I wanted to go into and exposed me to something else, and just wanted to say thank you. I'm like so touched by that, because that's why I teach. And teaching is a great way to learn.
Yes.
And the thing that's great about the class for me is that, I'm able to approach people from all different walks of life, and to have them come in and be guests to the class and talk to the class. And I have, like you're having with me, I have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And that never gets old.
Yes.
Because it's always interesting. It's always from a wide range of fields. And because the student body is also changing every semester. So it's not at all static. It's extremely fluid, and I'm always learning from it. So I love it.
Yeah, I can imagine it. It really does stay pretty fresh, even if on paper the curriculum might look similar from year to year.
Right.
There's so many other things that are different about it. So something else I picked up on in your book that I loved, and I'd never thought about it. You said, you don't get an education, you take it. And I love that phrase. That just really resonated with me. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the book and how that came about, because you interview so many people. I think about 40 people in your book. And I know
52,
the book,
actually.
Oh, 52. Why did I think 40? I don't know.
Because that's what the initial publicity said, and they hadn't counted
then that's
it right.
what so I read the initial publicity. So there are 52 people highlighted in the book.
Yeah.
And I know that the book, sort of emanated from the course. And were a lot of the people who you interviewed for the book, were a lot of them guest speakers in your class? And how did you put the book together? What are you hoping people will get out of it? I'm hoping a lot of people listening will want to read it. I would recommend that they do.
Bless you. Bless you, child. I kept getting asked over the years, wow, this class, you should really write a book about it and expose these ideas and this knowledge to a much wider range of people than just your class. And I thought, yeah, that's a cool idea, but I had no idea of how to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounded like a good idea. And then a funny thing happened. I guess it was about 3 years ago. I was at a dinner party, seated next to this woman who asked me what I did. And then I told her about the class. And the interesting thing about the name of the class, which is the same as the book, Creative Careers, Making a Living with Your Ideas, whenever I say the name of the class, people respond, oh, I wish I had a course like that when I was in college, even though I haven't even described what the class is. So I thought, well, that's a good title. My agent said to me, before the book was sold, said, hey, maybe we could come up with a better title. And I said, well, I'm open to it, but I've got now, at that point, 12 years of very unscientific, very undisciplined market research. And more than 90% of the people I mentioned the name of the class to respond, I wish I'd had a course like that.
Yeah.
But I'm open to it. Send me some other names. They wanted to brainstorm in their office. They did. None of the other names were very good. And she said, I think you've got the best name.
Yeah.
So that's what we went with.
Yeah.
Because that's really that states what the class is about. So when I met this woman, she introduced me to the head agent of that agency. The first thing that agent said to me was, how big's your social media following? No hello, just how big's your social media following? And I said, it's not significant. And she said, well, then I'm not interested. And I said, well, do you even care what the book is about? And she said, not really. No, I don't.
Wow.
And I said, yeah, that was my response. And nice meeting you too.
Yeah.
Thank you. And she said, look, if you don't have at least 100,000 followers, a publisher figures they can sell to maybe 5% of them. And that's 5,000 books. So that is worth a printing. That justifies doing a printing. So anyhow, I had nowhere near that. And that was the end of that discussion. I happened to be at a friend's book launch party 1 or 2 evenings later, speaking to this wonderful woman who I met there. And again, discussion of my class, sounds great. I'd love to come to your class. Would you mind if I came? I said, no, you can come and edit it. And she said, yeah, I think it'd be a great idea for a book. I told her the story. And she said, well, I'd like you to meet my agent, which I did. Met with that agent. We had, this was after actually this person went to the class with me. Her name is Jody Lipper. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. And she said, you've really got something here. This class is very cool. And we spoke with the agent and we talked for like 45 minutes, nothing to do about the size of the social media following.
Yeah.
And so I told her the story and she said, well, I don't really care what your social media following is with the people that you have interviewed. If you can get a handful of them to promote your book, that's a great megaphone for you.
Yeah.
And the interesting other part of it is, first you went to a business publisher, one of the premier business book publishers, and their response was, why would a business person care about creativity? Then they went to a self-help psychology publisher, and it's, well, why would creative people care about business? And I'm thinking, God, they just don't get it.
Yeah.
Then we went to Hachette, who is the publisher, who became the publisher.
I pronounced that wrong.
Well, it gave it a little more of an edge, a cutting edge, being a hatchet.
Hatchet.
Yes.
I hatcheted that. Okay.
And when I walked in there, they said, "Oh, we love your book." I said, "Oh, that's thank you. That's a nice greeting. And they said, well, we love the way that you have creativity and business hand in glove, because nobody looks at it that way. And it was great because they got it.
Yeah.
And they bought it.
Yeah.
And now, I'm in the shamelessly plug and get my book out there mode, because I really believe that these are ideas that are worth sharing.
I agree. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I say that enthusiastically because a lot of the ideas that are in here are ideas that are completely parallel and aligned to a lot of ideas that I certainly put out there. Perhaps sometimes in a somewhat different context, but certainly about, people making a living at something they love to do. But oftentimes people don't equate something they love to do with something they can make a living at. And they think that they have to be separate. I don't know why. I think it might come from, those of us who were either raised by or had previous generations who lived during the Depression, and people didn't think about making a living and loving what you do as being put together, because people during the Depression were so busy just putting food on the table.
Well, but I don't think that point of view has changed. When my kids were going through high school, a lot of the other parents, were talking about the ROI on the education.
Right.
And the investment in the education.
Right.
And if their kids had a creative bent at all, most of them were saying, well, what's your fallback? And my belief is that your fallback is you and your own savvy, cleverness, and hustle. And that's what you need to employ, because there's no careers anymore that are rock solid and safe.
I totally agree with that.
So why not go after what you really want?
Yeah. I want to really entice the listeners. Just drop a few names. Tell us a few of the people who you interviewed for this book that people might recognize and be whet their appetite a little bit.
Jesus.
Great.
Albert Einstein.
Excellent. Excellent.
I thought I'd go for the broadest possible audience.
Yeah, those are two. Yeah, those are.
And Shakespeare. So wanted to cover the spiritual, the practical, and the playwriting basis. And I won't tell you, by the way, which one represents which of those characteristics. So I've been fortunate to have a number of people, both well-known people such as Damon John, who is one of the sharks on Shark Tank, has a huge social media following, is also a good friend. And that's, by the way, another thing is when he heard about my book coming out, and he said, all right, well, you want me to post it on my social media? I said, yeah. He says, okay, just send me the stuff and let me know when you want me to do it. And then he did it. And that's a friend. He's very generous of spirit. Yeah. He's really a good guy.
Yeah. You get that feeling about him.
And it's true.
Yeah.
He's authentic.
Yeah.
He is authentic and a good person.
Yeah.
So Damon John, Carly Kloss, who people know as a model, but also she is a philanthropist. She is an entrepreneur. She's got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting. And I have to look at my book because I've interviewed 60 people since then.
Wow.
And I have the book propping up my computer right now. So, there, and Dylan Lauren, Ralph Lauren's daughter, who has Dylan's Candy Bar.
Right.
And Dylan's great. And she's done the class a couple times. And she always had me hold the class in her candy shop. So
fun.
So she'd serve some kind of great flavored coffee and candies, and the students would be wired to the gills on a sugar high. And she learned from her dad, and in terms of creating this kind of immersive environment that defines the brand.
Yeah.
And Joy Reid, who just got her daytime show. She was on the weekends, AM Joy. It's now the Reed Report.
Yeah.
And she is fantastic. And Joy is just a terrific person. And Vanessa Reed from the New York Times, who is great. And Sarah Maslin-Nier, who was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for her investigative reporting. But then there's people you may not have heard of, like Moran Cerf, who's a cognitive neuroscience scientist of significant note, who talked to us about how we make decisions and how our brain processes information. And that's really interesting. And Zaria Foreman, who's an outstanding artist, I check out her work. She does these large format paintings that look like photographs of glaciers and lakes, but she does them all with her fingertips and pastels. It's unbelievable.
I remember you talking about her. You saw her on a piece on CBS Sunday Morning, I think.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So I find people through other good people.
Yes.
And I also will find people, like I saw that segment on CBS Sunday Morning. Thought, oh, wow, this is cool. And then when they said her studio was in Brooklyn, I tracked her down. I got to where she did the class.
Yeah.
My wife called me in. There was something on CNBC about entrepreneurs. Kathy Ireland, who was, more Sports Illustrated covers than any model in history. And she was a very popular model. But she was also, she left modeling and created a multi-billion-dollar global brand. And, her story was amazing. And so I actually totally cold called her. And my wife showed me a picture of me with Kathy when I shot her for Ralph Lauren back in the late 80s.
Oh, that's funny.
And she is fabulous. So both people that are famous, people that aren't famous, but have incredible knowledge and wisdom to pass on to others.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake a lot of people go into, is like, how many names do I recognize?
Right.
Well, it's not about the names. It's about, it's about the ideas that these people can offer and the knowledge that they can serve up. And it's a pretty rich banquet.
Well, and I love the way you say it's a rich banquet. And I agree with you that, that the book covers people of all walks of life. And it's important for people to realize it's not just about fame and then that gets you to that point. You can come from all kinds of backgrounds and make these things happen. It's wonderful. And I know you also featured a mutual friend of ours, Dory Clark, in your book. So I wanted to mention her because she has a lot to do with how we met. So I'm always appreciative of Dory's influence.
Yeah, Dory is wonderful. Dory and I met about, I guess it was probably 8 years ago.
Yeah.
We have a good friend in common, Daniel Galati, and I was putting together a panel for the New York City Council on Economic Development. And so he introduced me to Dory. She was on the panel, and we've been friends ever since. And she's done the class a couple times since then, and she's wonderful.
Oh,
another generous spirit.
Yes.
She's just terrific.
She is. She's very generous. So, I'm wondering, I know that you've written a play.
Yes.
I know that's coming up. It feels like it's coming up soon, although we're going to have to wait a little while for that. Tell us a little bit about the play and other things that you've been doing in the last few years, because I want to hear everything, and yet we probably should wrap up soon.
Well, let me tell you everything. So the play is called Personality, the Lloyd Price Musical. And Lloyd Price is one of the cornerstone figures of rock and roll. And although you may not know who he is, I'm going to sing and apologize in advance for my singing a few bars of a song that I would guess almost all of you know. Because you've got walk a personality, talk a personality, smile a personality, charm. So that's Lloyd Price. And his first song was Laudimus Claudi. It was recorded in 1952, and that created a seismic change in the music industry. Because prior to the 50s, the music business was an adult business. Teenagers, young adults did not buy records. So I would go to my grandmother's house, and the record player was a big piece of furniture. It was before there was portable players.
Right.
And record albums, which were 78 RPM records. So it'd be like classical or opera.
Yeah.
It'd be like 5 discs in an album, and that's why they were called record albums. And 78's kind of an interesting footnote is like, I think the maximum record time was like 2 minutes and almost 2 minutes and 30 seconds or so. That dictated the length of songs. When LPs came out, that of course changed everything. LP being long playing records.
Right.
So when Lloyd recorded Lottie Miss Claudie, which was covered by Elvis, by the Beatles, by Bruce Springsteen and Little Richard, and one of the last songs that Amy Winehouse covered was one of Lloyd's songs, which was Stagger Lee, which is incredible. But Lottie Miss Claudie created this change because prior to that, if a record sold 3,000 to 5,000 copies, and this was from these independent labels that did blues and jazz, that was a lot. Then Fats Domino recorded a song called They Call Me the Fat Man. It sold about 29,000 copies, and people recognized, wow, there's a market here. But the interesting thing is at that time, if you wanted to buy a record by a black artist, you had to go to a black record store. It was called Race Records. When Lloyd did Lottie Miss Claudie, it sold over 1 million copies. That was unheard of.
Wow.
And that just totally shattered the wall that was called Race Records because nobody's prejudiced against green. Everybody wanted to make the money and not miss out on that opportunity.
Wow.
So Lloyd did that unbeknownst to him. And he was also an entrepreneur. He was the first musical artist of any color to start his own label. And he was the first black to open a nightclub below Harlem. So his life is incredible. He was entrepreneurial. He was creative. But he also had to deal with all the racial obstacles that were placed in his way. And his story is great. And he and I still talk every day. He's 87 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I love the guy. I mean, we've created quite a bond, me telling his story. We're due to open in May of 21 at the People's Light Theater outside of Philadelphia in Malvern. And I'm sure I'm not alone in hoping that the COVID-19 virus is behind us by that point and that people can resume lives of somewhat normalcy, and theater and movies and sports and all these things can be happening again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm very excited about it. We have an astoundingly creative, award-winning team who's working on the play. And that's, again, one of the great pleasures is collaborating with such wonderfully talented people.
Wow, that's so exciting. So exciting. Wow.
It is. Thank you.
Oh, so I know I'm gonna buy a ticket, maybe a few. I'm heading down to Malvern in May 21. So if people want to learn more about what you are doing these days, how would they find you?
Well, there's a few ways.
Yeah.
So I'll first give you 2 websites.
Okay.
There is madoffproductions.com. Do I need to spell this out, or will you have this around?
It'll be in the show notes. Yeah.
Okay. So Madoff Productions is the fashion and documentary and music video work that I've done. Then there's acreativecareer.com, which recently launched along with the book. And that's got videos of my guests and quotes organized by topic. And, that site is an ongoing work, and it's got great stuff from the guests. And I'm going to set up a thing where you can sign up and get all free, get updates and get unique things that if you don't subscribe, you don't get.
All right.
And there's at A Creative Career, which is the Instagram site with shorter clips from the class. And then finally, LinkedIn, I started a group called Creative Careers.
Oh,
and
nice.
I'm really I'm hoping that becomes like an idea hub,
Yeah.
where people can come and they can discuss issues that they're having with their work and creativity, and that people, we're crowdsourcing good advice and good ideas.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I encourage our listeners to partake in that. Absolutely. And eh, before we part ways here, what would you say is a key piece of advice that you might give somebody who is considering their next steps or some sort of transition? You've given so much throughout this interview, but I'm curious, what top of mind, what would be the one key piece that you would suggest?
Have realistic expectations. Research what it is you're interested in, and realize that change doesn't come quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and that you have to be ready for that change by educating yourself, looking at the field. If you're making a total career switch, looking at that field, looking at where you might fit in the best and what those opportunities are. But the trait that's most necessary, whether you're continuing along the same path in difficult times or you want to forge a new one, is perseverance. You just got to keep at it. And
Mm-hmm.
most people don't talk about how hard it is.
Right.
It's much easier to project this really flawless life, but that doesn't exist in reality.
Right.
The reality is, to be an entrepreneur is a lot of work, and you have to be prepared for that roller coaster ride. And it's difficult.
Yeah.
And it can be incredibly rewarding, as my life has been in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be incredibly difficult too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that uniquely the times that we're in have thrown a lot of people into a very disoriented place.
Yeah.
But you can also turn that on its head.
Yes.
And use the fear and anxiety that this situation has caused to propel your work. And that's something else.
I agree. Totally. Well, Jeff Madoff, thank you so much for being here today. You have given our listeners a lot to think about and a lot to act on. And I am so grateful to have you here today.
Well, I'm grateful for being here. It was wonderful talking to you. Have we started recording yet?
Oh, I better hit the record button.
Let's do it again.
All right.
Now, this was great fun, and I hope your listeners get something from it. And I enjoyed speaking with you and
Thank you so
sharing
much.
the ideas. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Jeffrey Madoff. It was so interesting to speak with him and learn about his enormous professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources or links mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them on the blog page of my website at www.tammygoolerloeb.com. Just look for episode 094. Are you thinking about what your next professional move is going to be? Perhaps there was a thought or idea that was sparked by listening to today's podcast with Jeff that you'd like to put into motion in your life. Or maybe you're feeling a little stuck. Get specialized group and individualized support, insights, and accountability from a brilliant mix of professional women in a safe, non-judgmental creative space. Join one of my small hybrid mastermind coaching groups, starting on a rolling basis. Learn more at https://bit.ly/navigating career change. If you were inspired by this episode with Jeff, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at www.tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.